Before we begin, I just want to say that I didn't plan to do a commentary on Kumo this soon after the last one was released. However, his video on Queen Seraphina saw him making some claims that I just felt should be responded to, so here we go. Now, the first thing I would like to note is Kumo's newfound distaste for anecdotes. Early on in the video, this happens.
However, in the case of Joshua Vida, Kumo is an absolute fucking moron and doesn't bother to talk about any of the other victims besides Jordan. You see, legal action was being pursued against Joshua Vida. Victim number 3 was in communication with detectives, and the case fell through because victim number 1 did not want to bother.
That's a pretty cool fucking anecdote there. I wonder what you're gonna use to back up that anecdote. Another fucking anecdote?
Now, the first thing I want to note is these aren't actually different anecdotes. The person Seraphina is talking to is victim number 3, so these would be the same person recounting the same story, but that's admittedly a bit of a nitpick. Instead, I want to point out that apparently Kumo is against anecdotes now, and I'm rather surprised by this development. Primarily because I remember Kumo's video on Lio, you know, the one Seraphina is responding to in the video of hers Kumo is covering. And therefore I remember that a good chunk of what Kumo said about Vida came from anecdotes. Although he didn't call them anecdotes. Here's him introducing that.
Now the problem with this is if there was even an ounce of weight to the claims about Joshua Vida, Lio giving it publicity and farming it for drama content only contributed to the impossibility he was complaining about, that being Vida getting charged with any sort of sex crimes. And this isn't speculation. According to the testimony from the alleged victim themselves, that is exactly what happened.
Now, Kumo is using the Vida case as essentially a microcosm for the issue of predator hunting in this video, with his thesis essentially being that online predator hunters make it harder for actual victims of predation to seek justice. His evidence for the involvement of online predator hunters being the reason why Vida was never convicted is, best as I can tell at least, Jordan's testimony and nothing else. And notice, by the way, how it's testimony with Jordan, however, it's anecdotes with Jibs. At least at the start. Near the end of the video, he does describe Seraphina's interview with Jibs as testimony. However, he also leaves out the fact that he was primarily basing some of his key claims off of testimony. Instead, he says the following.
Sure, you might have testimony. Sure, you might have potential evidence. But that evidence wasn't enough to get Vida arrested, so why is it enough for us to throw around the accusations? You're being very blatantly dishonest, and you're trying to spin this around as if I have some kind of problem with pedophiles being held accountable. But what I have a problem with is pedophiles not being held accountable because of you. My source for my telling of these events were legal records that you can publicly find, and that I even suggested you could go find by showing the link on screen. Your source to call me a liar and claim that I'm spreading misinformation is just purely fucking anecdotal and unverifiable.
So, Kumo, do you have any court documents that prove it was the involvement of online predator hunters which stopped Vida from being convicted for his crimes? After all, that is apparently the standard you hold yourself to. However, you haven't shown any evidence of that in either this video or the other video of yours I covered.
So the reason why the case fell through and Vida was I wouldn't say like caught or actually would be arrested for his sex crimes. The reason was not because of the like action being taken online against him, was it?
No, at least to my knowledge. No, at least to my knowledge.
What the fuck happened here? You were just so sure of yourself a second ago.
Oh my god, she added literally the most milquetoast qualifier in all of fucking existence. Therefore, what? She doesn't actually know what happened in this case? I don't get what you're going for here.
Now, I'm not going to sit here and act like internet vigilantism doesn't have any effect on a case like that.
Oh, so no, but you're not going to deny it? Well, Kumo might be right, but the police didn't tell us that was why.
Jibs didn't even say online predator hunting had negative effects on cases like this. Just that she wasn't going to say for sure they didn't have an effect. The nothingness of this statement means we can't really get anything out of it, let alone that your specific hypothesis of online predator hunting having the negative effect of being the reason that Vida wasn't convicted is true.
And then ultimately after that, the case fell through.
Yeah. we've had, like, at least I've had no further updates really, because they can't do too much with what they have, because it's mostly just a bunch of chat logs and just stuff like that. It's just messages.
All right, we're going to ignore the blatant red flag here that earlier they claimed that they had sent CP to Vita. That's already reason enough alone to suspect he has it.
Yeah, and Jib specifically mentioned that Vita went out of his way to make sure as little direct evidence of his actions existed as possible, specifically as a result of the Jazz situation. You even played that clip in this video.
Because after the stuff with Jazz, I believe Vita was a lot more careful, and I think he actually talks about wanting to be more careful in our logs, so...
How this caused Vita to act is explained just before this part of the interview.
I was handing over any sort of logs that I had of contact with Vita, and I just went over multiple times describing exactly what happened and exactly what kind of content Vita received from me, because Vita did receive CP from me when I was a minor. However, it was all either deleted or everything was over video call.
Kumo's response, by the way, is to just loop that last part and then kind of dismiss it.
However, it was all either deleted or everything was over video call.
So I ought to look into these other cases, and this is the other case that you wanted me to fucking look into. Phenomenal, dude. The glaring red flag that I do want to point out is how they're saying they didn't have enough proof, but now it's the proof wasn't solid enough because it was just screen capped.
Yeah, and if they had more proof, or proof that wasn't screen caps, they wouldn't have had that problem. You're not even splitting hairs here, because splitting hairs implies some kind of difference. There isn't that in this case. All that happened was two statements were phrased slightly differently despite them meaning the same fucking thing.
He deserved every minute of it. Kumo will also make statements such as this. But there's a problem with your suggestion. Most kids, and especially kids who are subject to grooming, don't watch creators like Lio Convoy to begin with. They don't watch brony content, so Vita and Toon Critics cases happened in a vacuum. You'd actually have to give Lio far more credit to believe that, in which case, by his own admission, he's in the boomer cartoon community, I hunt pedophiles. Same with Serafina. These aren't creators that have young demographics because their interests are far too boring and cringe for the victims to be in these communities. Vita's situation did not happen in a vacuum. In fact, it went well beyond the brony community. If you actually did your research, you would watch my video, and you would see that victim number 3 had nothing to do with the brony community at all.
I met Vita in a match of Dead by Daylight. He was streaming on Twitch under the handle The Drunk Legion, which I think he now goes by The Drunken Legion or something similar, with TTV and his Steam name alongside his friend at the time, Kuroko Mishima. So after the match, which the match ended up being actually really fun and more goofy rather than serious, I checked out both their Twitch channels, followed them, and I added them both on Discord in hopes of playing more matches with them, since I don't like solo queuing much. At the time, I was a small streamer getting started and only 16. I ended up chatting with Vita more due to his personality in a Discord server with a few others, which eventually moved to DMs, in which we exchanged memes, and I even drew a Legion profile picture for his Twitch.
After fleeing from the brony community, Vita went to the Dead by Daylight community to prey on multiple people, including Jibs.
Wow, you know what? The full scope of this is expanded so fucking much. It went from one niche in the brony community to another niche in the fucking Dead by Daylight community. Oh my god, what an amazing fucking nothing burger here. You know what, Serafina? I apologize. With this knowledge, I now know that Vita was on some commercial level child grooming. I should have known how much coverage this got with his 3 big followers on Twitter and his 200 followers on Twitch. Oh my god, this is so much bigger than I thought. Shit, for all we know, he might have gone international. We have Joshua fucking Epstein here on our hands, boys.
Wow, sarcasm. That's original.
Wouldn't the fact that Vita primarily limits himself to niche internet communities be all the more reason people should know about him, because he would have an easier time slipping into said smaller communities if the information about him wasn't already out there? Also, what did mentions of Twitter and Twitch followers have to do with anything? You can be an active predator with multiple victims and still not have that many followers on Twitter. Those aren't mutually exclusive at all? I don't get your point. And by the way, the actions of both Lio and Serafina must have done something to make Vita's actions more well known, given this clip from Serafina's video, which again Kumo plays in his.
Jibs, including others in the Dead by Daylight community, knew who Vita was eventually because of us.
Anyway, final thoughts. Kumo did not defend himself all that well. Good night and good luck.